The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched like a sea of metal beneath pale blue lights. Hundreds of beings from across the stars occupied custom-crafted seats, designed to fit bodies with wings, claws, multiple arms or skin and glowing eyes. The air was thick with the mingled scents of dozens of alien worlds. Elder Corrin moved slowly to the central platform, his every step deliberate on the smooth floor. A Zephyrian, over 1,000 years old, Corrin's gray skin bore the deep cracks of age, like ancient stone weathered by time. His large black eyes had witnessed empires rise and crumble. As he reached the center, the crowd fell into respectful silence. Even the youngest species knew to listen when the elders spoke. Corrin had lived while half the races present were still discovering fire. "My friends," Corrin began, his voice echoing effortlessly without amplification. "Today we speak of humans, those who dwell on the third planet, orbiting that yellow star on the outer rim." Soft murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some chuckled. Humans had only entered galactic space 50 years ago, barely fledglings. Many species saw them as weak, irrelevant. Commander Vex of the Draxan Empire stood abruptly. His armored exoskeleton gleamed like black obsidian, rows of razor-sharp spines lining his back. His red eyes burned with disdain. "Why waste our breath on soft-bodied primitives?" he barked. "They can barely keep their ships from falling apart." Several voices agreed. The Draxan were the most feared warriors in the galaxy, their empire, spanning 12 star systems. If Vex dismissed the humans, most were inclined to agree. Corrin raised a single withered hand. Silence returned. "I've watched humans for 3 centuries, he said calmly, "long before they knew we existed, and I've seen things that would chill even your blood." "What could those mammals possibly do that warrants fear?" asked Ambassador Zill of the Crystal Federation, her melodic voice carrying a sharp edge. "Their weapons are primitive, their ships crawl. They still haven't learned to bend space." Corrin's gaze swept across the crowd. "You think strength is measured by weaponry and speed? You are wrong. Humans wage wars no other species would survive, not because of superior firepower, but because they fight with something far more dangerous." "And what is that?" Vex growled, his voice grinding like stone. Corrin answered simply, "They fight with their hearts." The room stirred, uncertain. Most species prized logic and strategy. Emotion was a flaw. But Corrin pressed on. "When humans love, they will die to protect it. When they hate, they'll chase that hatred across galaxies. When they decide to act, nothing in the universe can stop them." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "I saw them fight a war that lasted 6 years. Millions perished, cities fell, children starved. Any other species would have surrendered, but the humans fought on, through horror, through hopelessness, because they believed it was right." "Foolish," scoffed Representative Molt of the Hive Collective, her compound eyes blinking. "Why waste so many lives on a lost cause?" "Because it wasn't lost," Corrin said. "They won. Humans win, even when winning should be impossible." He paused again. "Do you know what they call a day when everything is hopeless?" The hall was silent. "They call it Tuesday." A few delegates shifted uncomfortably. Corrin's voice softened, tinged with something like sorrow. "They laugh in the face of fear. They sing while their homes burn. I've seen them joke about death itself." Elder Yith of the Science Consortium raised a tentacle. "We've studied their biology. Physically, they are fragile, slower, duller senses. How can such creatures be dangerous?" Corrin nodded. "You're right about their bodies. A single Draxan could defeat 10 humans in combat. But humans don't fight fair. They fight smart. They fight together. I once saw a human colony attacked by raiders. They were outnumbered. The odds had been 20 to 1. The raiders came armed with superior weapons and reinforced armor. By all logic, The fight should have lasted minutes. What happened? Someone called from the back of the hall. Corin's eyes gleamed. The humans turned their farming tools into weapons. They knew the land, and they used it. Children barely 10 years old helped set traps. Elders too frail to fight still gave intel on raider movements. In just 3 days, they wiped out the entire force. Not one raider made it out alive. Commander Vex scoffed. A lucky victory. Nothing more. It wasn't luck, Corin replied, voice hard as steel. It's what humans do. They adapt, they learn, they never give up. And most importantly, they remember. He stepped to the edge of the platform. Let me tell you something about human memory. Hurt them, and they remember forever. Help them, and they remember even longer. They pass those stories down, generation to generation. A human will cross galaxies to repay a kindness or a debt. So they hold grudges, said Ambassador Zill, unimpressed. Many species do. Not like humans, Corin warned. Most of us forget old wounds when new challenges appear. But humans, they remember. They don't forgive not when the innocent are harmed. A hush fell over the hall. Some delegates looked visibly uneasy. Corin's voice softened, yet somehow felt heavier, darker. There's something else. Humans love their families more than their own lives. Threaten a human child, and you don't make one enemy. You make enemies of every human who ever lived. Commander Vex tried to sneer, but his voice had lost its edge. You're trying to scare us with stories. No, Corin said. I'm trying to save your lives. He looked around the chamber. We fight for land, resources, strategy. Humans fight for ideals, for love, for hope, for meaning. That makes them more dangerous than any weapon we've ever known. The Elder's eyes, black as space, seemed to shimmer with distant memories. I've seen what happens when humans are pushed too far. No species survives that storm unchanged. Trust me, you trust nothing else I said. Do not provoke them. But as he scanned the room, Corin saw the disbelief. The younger species heard only talk of human fragility. They mistook restraint for weakness. Where Corin saw danger, they saw opportunity. The vote was called. The decision made. Humanity would be confined to their own solar system. Trade routes cut. Colonization frozen. Exploration beyond their homeworld forbidden. As the delegates filed out of the hall, excitedly discussing enforcement plans, Elder Corin stood alone on the platform. He stared up at the vast dome, where stars glimmered like cold diamonds. Forgive me, humans, he whispered into the silence. I tried to warn them, but some lessons must be learned in pain. Somewhere in the void, hidden between the stars, he knew humanity was watching, waiting, and when their time came, the galaxy would finally understand why the elders spoke of humans with such fear and such awe. But by then, it would be too late. 6 months later, the Galactic Council's decree had long reached Earth, delivered by sterile alien voices, through diplomatic channels. The message was clear. Containment. Humanity was to remain in its own system. No more colony ships. No more exploring beyond Neptune. But humans had never been good at obeying rules. They didn't write dot, far from Earth. The colony ship New Horizon drifted silently through the dark between stars. It moved like a ghost, undetectable by standard galactic scans. Inside, 10,000 souls lived, worked, and dreamed of a world they had never seen. 2 miles long, the New Horizon was a marvel of human engineering. Massive rotating sections provided artificial gravity. Lush garden chambers offered air, food, and serenity. It wasn't just a ship, it was a declaration, a quiet, gleaming no. To the Council's ultimatum, Captain Jake Morrison stood silently on the bridge, gazing out at the stars through the wide viewing window. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady eyes that had seen the horrors of war during the Mars conflicts and the fragile peace that followed. Now, years later, he was leading thousands towards something humanity had always dreamed of, a true new beginning. "How long until we reach the Kepler system?" he asked, his voice steady. 18 hours, Captain, replied his navigation officer. "All systems nominal. Families are excited. Some of the kids, they've never even seen a planet before." Jake smiled. That part never got old. Many of the colonists were born on space stations or moon bases. To them, a planet wasn't just a place, it was a fantasy. Open skies, fresh air, clouds, rain. "Alert everyone to prepare for orbital insertion," Jake said. "Tomorrow's going to change everything." In the ship's science section, Dr. Lisa Hayes worked late into the artificial night. Her tablet glowed with maps of their destination, oceans, mountains, storm patterns, and mineral-rich zones. She was one of Earth's leading terraformers. Her innovations had helped breathe life into the harsh Martian surface. Now, she wasn't just helping shape a new world. She was helping build a future for 10,000 souls in the cabin behind her. Her 7-year-old daughter Amy stirred from sleep. "Mom, are we almost there?" she asked, eyes still heavy with dreams. "Almost, sweetheart," Lisa said, setting down her tablet and wrapping her arms around the girl. "Tomorrow you'll see your first real sunrise. Orange and purple skies, not like the lights on the ship." Amy yawned. "Will there be animals? Real ones, not just from books?" Lisa smiled. "Yes, there are creatures down there. We'll study them, learn from them, maybe even live beside them." As mother and daughter dreamed aloud of sunlight and forests, something unseen crept closer through the dark. Death, at the edge of the Kepler system. The Draxan battle fleet had waited in silence for 3 long days. Commander Vex stood tall on the bridge of his flagship, his armored form gleaming under dim crimson lights. On the scanners, a large human ship drifted into range just as expected. "There they are," he growled. "Right on schedule." His second-in-command studied the feed. "They've come unarmed. No escorts, no defenses." Vex chuckled, a sound like stone being crushed. "Primitive fools. This won't even be a battle. It'll be a harvest." Behind him, rows of Draxan warships loomed like obsidian giants, bristling with cannons and missile pods each, one capable of leveling cities or vaporizing moons. "Should we demand their surrender?" asked one officer. "The Council prefers fewer civilian casualties." The Council voted for containment, Vex sneered. "They said nothing about mercy, and dead humans don't rebel." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their engines, then their life support. No survivors, no messages. Erase them." On the new horizon, every corridor exploded with flashing red lights and wailing alarms. Families froze, some mid-sentence, others mid-dream. The voice over the COM system was firm, calm, and terrifying. "All hands, this is the bridge. We have detected multiple hostile ships inbound. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. All personnel report to emergency stations." Lisa scooped Amy into her arms and bolted from their cabin. Around her, others were doing the same, parents clinging to children, elders being helped by younger hands. Confusion rippled through the ship, but so did something else. Resolve. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge, jaw clenched, watching the impossible unfold. The Draxan ships had surrounded them, no warning, no declaration, just power, cold and brutal. "Evasive pattern Delta 2, he ordered. "Redirect power to shields. Prep escape pods for all non-essential personnel." "Captain," his tactical officer said quietly, "we won't survive. A direct hit. We're not a battleship." "I know," Morrison replied, eyes locked on the stars. "But we're still going to fight." Children screamed as their parents rushed them through the dimly lit corridors. Alarms blared, the walls trembled. No one understood what was happening, only that something terrible was coming. Mom, what are the bad ships doing? Amy asked, as Lisa carried her toward the emergency shelter. I don't know, baby, Lisa whispered, clutching her daughter tightly. But Captain Morrison will protect us. He knows what to do. On the bridge of the New Horizon, Captain Jake Morrison stared at the scanner, his face grim. 15 Draxan warships were closing in, moving into an attack formation. He'd seen war before, but this was a slaughter waiting to happen. Their ship had no weapons beyond a few basic mining lasers. Their shields were designed to deflect space debris, survive a military assault. Open all frequencies, Morrison ordered. Broadcast a message. Let them know we're a civilian vessel, carrying families, children. Tell them, we'll leave the system if that's what they want. The comms officer tried again and again. No response. The Draxan fleet kept advancing, cold and silent, like wolves circling a bleeding deer. Captain, the scanning officer said in a hushed voice, they're charging weapons. Morrison closed his eyes for a moment, just long enough to see the faces of the children on his ship, the families, the trust they'd placed in him. Send an emergency signal to Earth, he said. Now, get the message out. Seconds later, the first Draxan energy blasts struck the New Horizon. The rear section ruptured in an instant, tripped apart like paper. Metal screamed. Atmosphere exploded into space. Emergency doors slammed shut, sealing the breach, but it wasn't enough. More fire followed. In the emergency shelter, Lisa felt the ship shudder violently around her. The lights flickered. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Amy looked up, her voice trembling. Mom, are we going to be okay? Lisa wanted to say yes. She wanted to lie, to protect her child from the truth. But she couldn't. Not this time. She kissed Amy's forehead, tears in her eyes. I love you, Amy, more than all the stars in the sky. No matter what happens, remember that. Outside, the Draxan fired again, relentless, methodical, tearing the New Horizon apart section by section. Escape pods jettisoned into space, each holding a handful of terrified survivors. But the Draxan didn't stop. They hunted the pods. One by one, they destroyed them like targets in a game. On the bridge, Captain Morrison stayed until the final moment. Smoke filled the control room. Consoles burned. He began recording his last message. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the colony ship New Horizon. We carried 10,000 civilians, 3,000 of them children. We posed no threat. We came in peace. All we wanted was a place to call home. A burst of white fire cut him off, mid-sentence, then silence. When the attack was over, the Draxan scanned the wreckage carefully. Most escape pods were destroyed. A few had drifted into deep space, damaged, dying, or already dead. Commander? Vex surveyed the carnage. Send the report to the Council, he said. Note an illegal human colonization attempt. Say it was neutralized in accordance with regulations. He turned his back to the stars. Make no mention of survivors. The Draxan ships departed, leaving only twisted wreckage in their wake, and a silence they believed was victory. But they were wrong. In the frozen dark between stars, a few escape pods drifted on emergency power flickering. Failing. Inside one of them, 7-year-old Amy Hayes huddled alone. Her parents were gone. The only sound was her own breathing and the faint hum of the life support system. Clutched in her tiny hands was her mother's research tablet, its screen still glowing. She was scared, broken, but she was alive, and she remembered everything. 3 days later, a rescue ship found the remnants of the New Horizon. Most pods were lifeless floating tombs in the void, but a few still held survivors, barely clinging to life. Amy was one of them, and in the years to come, as the galaxy reeled from what the Draxan had done, her name would echo across worlds, not as a victim, but as the spark of humanity's wrath. In the cold darkness between stars, 7 escape pods still clung to life. Among them was a little girl, cradling a data tablet to her chest. Her name was Amy Hayes, the youngest survivor of the New Horizon massacre. When the medical team pried open her pod 3 days later, she hadn't spoken a word. Her eyes were open but hollow. Her parents were dead. Her home was gone. Most of the faces she had ever known were floating as ashes in space, but in her arms, she held something precious, her mother's research tablet. Inside it were years of scientific work and the final recordings from the New Horizon, data logs, transmission files, personal messages, the last heartbeat of a dying dream. When the footage reached Earth, it hit the human race like a lightning bolt on dry grass. Every news channel played the same horrifying story. The final moments of the New Horizon children, screaming, explosions tearing through the ship's corridors, a teddy bear spinning slowly in zero gravity alone in the dark, and then silence. The image of a child's toy floating in space became burned into human memory forever. In Earth's great assembly hall, every representative of every human colony had gathered. Mars, the Moon, the Belt, Europa, Titan, even the outposts. Orbiting Neptune. At the front stood Admiral Kate Sullivan. Her gray hair was pulled back, her medals shining like battle scars. She had fought in more wars than anyone present. But this was different. She faced the hall. Fellow humans, she began, her voice echoing through the silence. 3 days ago, we lost 10,000 of our own. Men, women, and children. Families who wanted only to build a new life among the stars. She paused, eyes scanning the room. They were unarmed. They posed no threat. And they were slaughtered because they were human. A ripple of emotion moved through the crowd. Some wept. Others clenched fists. The massive holoscreens around the chamber began to scroll through photos, images from the New Horizon before the attack. Children playing in garden domes, parents cooking meals, scientists laughing in labs. Now every one of them gone, reduced to pixels in memory. For 50 years, Sullivan continued, we tried to find our place in this galaxy through peace. We offered our hands in friendship. We shared our technology. We humbled ourselves before species who called us inferior. Her voice rose. We believed that if we proved ourselves civilized, they would accept us as equals. She paused again, this time letting the silence speak. We were wrong. Gasps, whispers, nods. They will never see us as equals, she said. They think compassion is weakness. They think our love for our children is a flaw. They think because we choose peace, we are incapable of war. A man rose from the front, wrote Dr. Carl Watson, the brilliant mind who had designed humanity's first faster-than-light engines. His hands trembled as he asked, Admiral, what do we do now? How do we respond to this? Admiral Sullivan's eyes turned to steel. We show them. Her voice dropped, cold and final. We show them what humanity becomes when our children are killed. We show them why our ancestors once burned countenance to survive. We show them that no matter how far we've come, we have never forgotten how to fight. The chamber erupted not with applause, but with grim determination. Across human space, the transformation began that very day. Shipyards that once built cargo freighters and science vessels were retooled overnight. The blueprints were new. These ships weren't designed for diplomacy. They were made to survive war. They had thicker hulls, heavier shields, faster drives, and they carried weapons, lots of them. On Mars, the terraforming factories that once birthed life now shifted to manufacturing death. Orbital platforms turned into ship forges. Mining drones were retrofitted as autonomous defense units. Technicians who once dreamed of new worlds learned to build machines that could burn them. There were no protests, no debates. Everyone had seen the footage. Everyone had seen Amy Hayes. Everyone remembered the sound of the New Horizon dying, and together, humanity whispered the same silent vow, never again. Dr. Carl Watson worked 18-hour days in his lab. surrounded by equations, simulations, and glowing schematics. Once, his team had studied the stars to explore them. Now, they studied them to dominate them. The aliens think our technology is primitive, Watson told his exhausted staff during a rare break. They see our chemical rockets and simple computing systems and assume we're centuries behind. But what they don't understand, what they've never understood, is that humans have always been masters at making tools. He paused, voice like iron. And the most efficient tool we ever made was war. From human research centers across the system, innovation erupted like a flood breaking through a dam. New shield systems, based on physics alien races hadn't even begun to study. Weapons capable of breaking molecular bonds. Engines that folded space in ways never before. Attempted rendering old faster than light. Drives obsolete. But the greatest changes weren't in steel or code. They were in people. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Cross had once been a teacher specialist in defensive tactics at the Earth Defense Academy. His lectures had focused on rescue operations and peaceful deterrence. That era was over. Now he stood before a room of young officers, with fire in his eyes, and a new gospel on his lips. "Forget what you were taught about defense," he said. "Defense didn't save the New Horizon. Diplomacy didn't protect those children." He stepped closer, voice low but unshakable. "From this day forward, we trained for one purpose: to carry war to those who spilled innocent blood, and make them regret the day they thought humanity was weak." The cadets sat in silence, faces grim, eyes fixed forward. These weren't wide-eyed explorers anymore. They were becoming something older, harder, and far more dangerous. Across human civilization, the transformation was total. Parents who had never held a weapon learned how to shoot. Teachers rewrote their lessons, adding war theory and combat tactics. Factories once dedicated to terraforming now churned out armor plating and plasma rifles. The survivors of the New Horizon were treated like sacred relics, respected, protected, studied. They remembered everything. Each one was gently interviewed. Every detail, every movement of the Draxon fleet was logged and analyzed, and Amy Hayes, the youngest survivor, held the most precious knowledge of all, in a quiet room on Earth. Admiral Kate Sullivan sat across from the 7-year-old girl. Amy still rarely spoke, but when she did, her words carried the weight of truth. "Can you tell me about the ships, sweetheart?" the Admiral asked softly. Amy nodded and tapped her mother's tablet. Images bloomed to life, detailed schematics of the Draxon ships, drawn from memory with eerie precision. "I saw them," Amy whispered, "through the window. I didn't blink. They were very big." She looked up, but they weren't as big as they thought they were. The Admiral leaned forward, heart tight. "What do you mean?" Amy hugged the tablet tighter. "Mommy always said bullies only act strong. But really, they're scared inside. That's why they shoot first." Admiral Sullivan went cold. In that moment, she understood what the Draxon had sensed, what they feared. The humans weren't weak. They were becoming strong, and the massacre hadn't been a show of dominance. It had been a preemptive, striking act of fear. "Thank you, Amy," the Admiral said softly. "You've helped us understand what they tried to hide." As months passed, the new human fleet rose like a wave of iron across the void. Shipyards produced vessels faster than ever before. The designs were sleek, angular, elegant, in their deadliness. Form followed function. Every line, every hull, every system had one purpose: justice. The compassion that once defined humanity hadn't disappeared. It had focused like a laser dot, and in the distant corners of the galaxy, Elder Corrin, watching silently, felt the shift like a tremor in space. He had warned them. The younger species had not listened. Now they would learn what it meant to provoke humanity. And for those who had ordered the massacre, it was already far too late. 18 months later, of Draxon space, the scanners on the Draxon outposts lit up in confusion. Hundreds of unidentified ships had dropped out of folded space. They didn't match any known configuration. Their hulls shimmered with adaptive armor. Their engines left no trail. They moved like predators. Leading them was the UES Retribution, a flagship unlike any ever built. Captain Alex Stone stood on its bridgeung for a fleet commander, promoted fast due to his unmatched performance in the brutal simulator wars that had become humanity's crucible. His voice was calm as he stared at the tactical map. "Comes. They're hailing us from multiple defense stations," his officer reported. "They demand to know our purpose." Stone's mouth curved into a cold smile. "Tell them we've come to discuss the New Horizon incident. Tell them we want to talk about the 10,000 lives they ended." Beside him, Commander Ryan Cross studied the enemy fleet on the main viewer. "Nearly 600 ships," he said. "On paper, they outnumber us 3-1. Stone's voice was razor sharp. "And they still won't be enough." Cross nodded. "Their formation is exactly what we predicted. They're fighting the last war. Then let's show them what this war looks like." Stone turned to his crew. "All ships, execute Battle Plan Alpha." His voice dropped to a whisper that carried across the bridge. "Remember, we're not here to destroy everything. We're here to deliver justice." The fleet spread out with synchronized precision, vanishing into the darkness between stars. The Draxon had brought numbers. Humanity had brought evolution. And in moments, the galaxy would witness the price of underestimating the one species that never stopped adapting and never forgot its dead. The human fleet moved in a formation that looked chaotic to alien. A swirling dance of patterns too complex for traditional tactics to follow. The Draxon commanders watching from their flagship felt no fear. They had the numbers, they had the firepower, and most importantly, they had history on their side. Admiral Vex, pride of the Draxon Empire, the very one who had ordered the New Horizon's destruction, stood tall on his bridge, confident. "Look at them," he sneered. "They fly like children, playing war. One volley will scatter them like leaves in a storm." But when the Draxon fleet opened fire, nothing happened the way they expected. The energy beams cut through space, but hit only emptiness. The human ships had vanished, moved with impossible precision. They twisted and arced through gravity-defying maneuvers as if they were dancing, not dodging death. The new gravity drives Dr. Watson's masterpiece allowed humans to do what no other species had even imagined, bend the laws of motion to their will. On the Draxon bridge, Admiral Vex watched in disbelief. How are they doing that? The answer came without words, delivered instead through the return fire. Focused energy beams lanced through the Draxon fleet, not in brute force salvos, but in delicate, targeted strikes. Human weapons didn't explode. They surgically disabled. Enemy ships lost propulsion. Weapons shut down. Life support collapsed. The humans weren't creating a massacre. They were demonstrating total control. Captain Alex Stone stood at the center of the UES Retribution, eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Signal the Draxon flagship," he ordered. "I want to speak with Admiral Vex." The communications screen blinked to life, revealing the furious and disoriented face of the Draxon warlord. Vex's red eyes blazed. "What do you want, human?" "I want you to understand something," Captain Stone said, calm as a still sea. 18 months ago, you ordered the murder of 10,000 innocent people, men, women, and children. They had no weapons. They never harmed anyone." Vex snarled. "Your species is weak. You cry over every loss. You should have stayed in your system where you belonged." Stone didn't blink. "Perhaps, but you made a fatal mistake. You killed our children." He leaned forward. "And when you kill human children, you awaken something ancient, something that has slept in our species for generations." Behind him, the Draxon fleet was unraveling. Ship by ship, system by system, they were being rendered helpless. This is impossible, Vex whispered, watching his armada fall apart. Your technology was primitive, your ship slow, clumsy. That was yesterday, Captain Stone said. Today, we are something else. You see, humans, we learn from our mistakes. Quickly, brutally, and we make sure our enemies never get a second chance to repeat theirs. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted just 4 hours. When it ended, the mighty Draxan fleet floated powerless in the dark, not destroyed, just defeated. Every ship disabled, every crew alive but trapped. Not one human casualty. Minimal damage to the fleet. Commander Ryan Cross approached Stone on the bridge. His voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. All enemy vessels neutralized, sir. Excellent, Stone said. He turned back to the screen, where Admiral Vex sat in stunned silence. Now, Stone said, let's talk about terms. Vex spat the word back at him. Terms. You will order all Draxan forces to stand down, Stone said firmly. You will provide us with the full records of the New Horizon attack. You will surrender yourself and your senior officers for trial on war crimes, and you will return the bodies of our dead for proper burial. And, if I refuse... Vex growled. Captain Stone didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Then, we will take what we want, he said. The only difference is, your people will suffer for your pride. All around the Draxan flagship, human vessels moved into final positions. Their weapons remained online, but still held their fire. They were waiting, and that was more terrifying than any barrage. Vex looked around his shattered bridge. The crew that had once conquered 12 star systems now sat in silence, powerless at the mercy of the species they had called primitive. How? He whispered. How did you become so strong, so fast? Stone's reply was quiet and devastating. Because you gave us a reason. For 50 years, we dreamed of peace. We explored. We built. We shared. We believed. He paused, letting every word sink like lead into Vex's chest. Then you killed our children. Commander Cross stepped forward, beside his captain. And when you did that, he said, voice like steel, you didn't just kill 10,000 humans. You killed the dream of peace. And in its place, you awakened something we've kept buried for a long time. We are not the same species you fired on. We are what you created when you chose murder over mercy. Admiral Vex slumped in his chair, the weight of the moment crushing his arrogance. I surrender, he said at last, defeated. My fleet surrenders. We will comply with your demands. Stone gave a single, respectful nod. A wise choice, he said. You'll find that humans can be merciful to those who show wisdom. He leaned in one last time. But remember this, Admiral. You brought this on your people when you chose to murder children in the name of order. The screen went dark. The battle was over. The human fleet stood alone and challenged in Draxan space. But this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. News of the human victory spread faster than light across the galaxy. Species that had once laughed at humanity now watched speechless as battle footage played on every Interstellar broadcast. The so-called primitive species had defeated the mighty Draxan Empire in just 4 hours. Not one human ship lost, not a single casualty, and the Draxan fleet, once the terror of 12 star systems, now hung motionless in space, defeated, disarmed, and silent in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. Elder Corrin received the news with a heavy heart, not pride. He had warned them, he had begged them not to provoke humanity. But now they would all learn the truth the hard way. They had awakened something ancient, something that had slept peacefully for generations, something that preferred peace, but was very, very good at war. The age of human expansion had begun, and this time, no one would be able to stop it. The shockwave of humanity's victory reached the Council before Admiral Vex's surrender message even arrived. On Nexus Prime, capital of the Galactic Union, emergency sessions were held day and night. Panic buzzed through the halls like a virus. Ambassador Zeal of the Crystal Federation stood at her platform, her normally musical voice trembling. How did we not see this coming? Our intelligence, said human technology, was centuries behind. Intelligence reports, Elder Corrin said, rising slowly, can be wrong, especially when they tell us what we want to hear, instead of what we need to know. The chamber went quiet. Representative Molt of the Hive Collective fluttered her wings nervously. What do we do now? If the humans decide to expand by force, who could stop them? Perhaps, Corrin said gently. The real question is, why would they want to? Silence. For the first time, many council members realized they had never considered that humans might be fighting for more than territory. That maybe, just maybe, it wasn't conquest they were after. Then came the next shock. General Cortec of the Galactic Military Defense Command rose. Voice taut with tension. Long-range sensors confirm it. A human fleet is approaching Nexus Prime. 50 ships, including their flagship. Panic exploded. Some representatives demanded that the planetary defenses prepare for war. Others called for evacuation. A few Shakan and Pale suggested surrender. Enough. Elder Corrin raised his hand. Before we let fear destroy what dignity we have left, ask yourselves this. The humans could have annihilated the entire Draxan fleet, but they didn't. They could have invaded Draxan territory, but they chose not to. What does that tell you? 3 days later, the human fleet arrived. They took positions around Nexus Prime, not in attack formations, but as guardians. Then they sent a single message. We request permission to address the Galactic Council. Permission was granted, and humanity entered the chamber not as conquerors, but as a delegation of survivors. Admiral Kate Sullivan led them, shoulders squared with quiet strength. She had watched her species rise from grief to resolve, from ashes to iron. Behind her walked Captain Alex Stone and Commander Ryan Cross, uniforms gleaming with the insignia of Earth's new United Military Force. But it was the smallest member of the delegation who drew every eye. Amy Hayes, now 9 years old, walked beside the Admiral, silent, steady, and unshakable. She carried her mother's old research tablet, the same one that had recorded the New Horizons' final moments, the same device that now contained justice. Admiral Sullivan stood at the center of the chamber. Her voice rang clear, calm, and unyielding. Honored members of the Galactic Council, we come before you, not as rulers, but as a people demanding recognition and justice. She gestured to Amy, who stepped forward with the quiet dignity of someone who had seen death and chosen to live. This is Amy Hayes, the youngest survivor of the New Horizon massacre. She watched her parents die, along with 10,000 innocent souls. The chamber shifted. Some representatives looked away. Others lowered their eyes in shame. You voted to contain us, Sullivan continued. You treated us like a threat to be managed. You labeled our hope for peace as dangerous, and when we extended our hand in friendship, you cut it off. Captain Stone stepped forward next. The Draxan Empire has surrendered. Their leaders await trial for war crimes. We have recovered the remains of our dead and buried them among the stars they dreamed of reaching. Then Commander Cross, but this is not about revenge. This is about making sure no other species ever suffers what we suffered. No other child should watch their family die because someone else deemed them inconvenient. Elder Corrin slowly made his way to the center platform, his ancient steps echoing in the chamber's silence. I warned this council 20 months ago, he said. I told you that provoking humans would lead to consequences none of us were prepared for. You ignored me. He turned to face his fellow counselors. Now, you've seen what humanity becomes when its children are murdered. You mistook compassion for weakness. You thought tears meant surrender, but you were wrong. The chamber sat in stunned silence. Admiral Sullivan gave a respectful nod to the elder before speaking again. We do not seek to rule the galaxy. We only ask for what should have been ours all along. Her voice did not shake. Open borders for peaceful trade and exploration, fair representation in this council, and above all, justice for all innocent lives. Representative Malt, wings trembling, finally asked, "And if we refuse?" Captain Stone stepped forward, eyes steady as stone. "Then, you will have chosen to repeat the same mistake the Draxan made." He paused, "and you will discover that humanity has learned many new things." The vote took 3 hours of fierce debate, but when the final tally was cast, the decision was clear. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Council. With it came all the rights and responsibilities shared by the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Trade restrictions were lifted. Human expansion was officially recognized, and a new law was passed, one that would echo for centuries to come. Any attack on a civilian population shall be considered a galactic war crime, punishable by the united force of council, justice. As the historic session came to a close, Elder Corrin approached the human delegation. His ancient crystal blue eyes fell upon Amy Hayes, who now stood calmly in her diplomatic robes, still holding the same research tablet that had once recorded the screams of a dying ship. There was sorrow in Corrin's expression, regret, not just for what had happened, but for what could have been prevented. "I am sorry for what happened to your family, young one," he said gently. "I tried to stop it, but the galaxy can be painfully slow to learn wisdom." Amy looked up at the towering elder, not with fear, but with quiet grace. "My mom used to say, sometimes bad things have to happen, so good things can grow after. Maybe all those people died, so nobody else ever would." Corrin blinked, surprised. In over 1,000 years, few had ever spoken such truth with such simplicity. "Your mother," he said softly, "was a wise woman, I believe. She would be very proud of what you've become." Years passed, and the galaxy began to heal. Humanity spread among the stars, not as conquerors, but as builders, explorers, and protectors. New colonies were established, not with guns, but with greenhouses and schools, and everywhere they went, the humans remembered. They remembered the price they had paid aboard the New Horizon. They remembered Amy's silence in the escape pod. They remembered the galaxy's mistake and their vow to never let it be repeated. Amy Hayes grew into one of Earth's most respected diplomats. She walked the halls of the Galactic Council, with her mother's old tablet still in hand, a symbol of peace earned, not gifted. She was the bridge between worlds, the voice that calmed storms before they could become wars. The proof that humanity's strength was not just in its weapons, but in its refusal to surrender to despair. Even the Draxan Empire, humbled and broken, began to change. Their younger generations no longer glorified conquest. Some even came to admire humanity, not for their might, but for their resilience, their refusal to stay broken. And in the grand chamber of Nexus Prime, a new saying began to circulate among council members. Remember the Elder's warning. Some mistakes can never be undone. Elder Corrin lived long enough to see the change he had always hoped for. A galaxy that no longer saw strength as destruction, but as the wisdom to protect. On his deathbed, surrounded by beings from dozens of worlds, he whispered his final words with a wry, tired smile. "I told them so." And in the cold silence between stars, where the light of peace had once flickered faintly, humanity proved something the ancients had long feared and long respected. It was not Earth's technology that made them dangerous. It wasn't even their unyielding will. It was this. They refused to believe that injustice was inevitable. They carried hope like fire through the darkness and proved it could still burn bright enough to light the way home.